Hi, friends. Welcome back to State of the Union. I'm your host, Josh Horton. Today, I'm talking with the designer and illustrator Matt Stevens, longtime friend and collaborator, and the mind behind projects like Max 100 and Good Movies as Old Books that have quietly shaped how a lot of us think about our personal work. We talk about what happens when you pour yourself into client work and watch it get walked back, how Matt decides what actually makes a portfolio, and why over-communicating and asking better questions can save a project before it goes off the rails. We also dig into how a simple Air Max obsession turned into a 100-piece illustration series, book, and a Nike commission, and how reimagining movies as old book covers led to a book deal, prints, and a whole second lane to his career. Along the way, Matt shares what a 90-day stint at Facebook taught him about scale and satisfaction, why he stayed a one-person studio in Charlotte, and how being a jack of a few trades has actually kept him in business. If you're a designer, illustrator, or studio of one trying to use personal work to change the kind of clients you attract, or just wondering how to keep going without burning out, this episode's for you. Let's jump in. Matt and I have been friends for a long time. We've done some work together. Matt's been to Memphis for multiple conferences, has given a workshop, I believe, at one of those conferences, right? Nice. Do you remember which one you spoke at? What's crazy is that it's been like 12 years of doing this. So it's really hard for me to peg people.
12 years.
On this
Holy
stuff.
cow.
Yes.
I think I was at the second one. So I went to the first one.
That's right. You were on stage in the train station.
Yep. And then, so I spoke at the second one. Mm-hmm.
Killer. Yeah, that one's a little bit overlooked because of the venue change. I'm so used to that. The venue we were in when you did your workshop. And you and Rob Zilla and I realized we had the same glasses from Warby Parker at the time.
Exactly.
And
I haven't won them since, yes.
Yeah. So, and so, that venue often gets overlooked. But if you don't know, if you weren't there in 2015, we have this really beautiful train station that's now a hotel that we turned into a venue for our second conference, which was really special too, because we doubled capacity and sold that one out too. Memphis at the time was incredibly hungry for it. And I felt like the lineups we put together and the friends and connections I was making at that time were just ridiculous. Do you remember how we both kind of started knowing of each other? I guess we were working together or about to start working together around that time.
So I came to the first one. I came with Joey Ellis, and I knew Don.
God, I love that.
Just a little bit then, but I met him for the first time there.
That's right. Okay.
It was just my master plan to come to the first one, convince you to let me speak at the second. No, I think that's when we got to know each other. And then, so then I spoke at the next one, got to know you a little bit more. And then we, did a few projects after that.
Ghost River Brewing Company, which, do you know what happened there?
I don't.
Yeah. So this is no crazy stuff, but you can see on Matt's website the work that we did for that Ghost River Brewing Company, first craft brew in Memphis, Tennessee. Really tasty beer, by the way. Like, I think that's what they're known for, is super drinkable, tasty beer. Matt and I, they were wanting to the onus of all of this, I think that's the right word. Basically, they were wanting to expand into a big tap room, and they were starting distribution outside of Memphis into Nashville, Little Rock, different areas and stuff, expanding distribution. So I wanted to help give them a beer brand that would stack up to a national market, because, when you're local, you get thrown in the mix of everyone. You can't just do local brews and stack up. So I approached Matt at the time, which he was doing some really fantastic branding. And Matt's also a prolific illustrator as well, too. And one of the things that I wanted to bring to the table was, instead of this idea, I think a lot of craft beer companies do this thing where they just change colorways every time they have a new beer and new names. I was like, hey, Matt, we've got to come up with stories and illustrations behind each beer. And man, knocked it out of the park. So fast forward a couple years after that work, and this guy, which I'll remain nameless, if you know Memphis, you know who this person is. So he bought the brewery and then just completely abandoned all of this work that we did. All of it. And then went back to the tree, which again, if we're talking about branding and stuff like that, they had a tree as their logo previously, and it was really a cool mark, but it was more of an illustration. It was very, very
Yeah.
detailed. You shrunk it down, and you couldn't tell what it was. It looked like an ink blot, especially if you inverted it. It looked really confusing. And so we solved for that. Matt nailed it. We did a lantern, first brewing company, ghosts, spooky, whatever. It was awesome. And then as soon as they got bought out a few years after, they just completely went back to the tree. And now everything is based on the tree. It's like, if it's a honey logger, it's just a tree covered in honey. If it's, it's just really interesting. If you go to their website, I'll just let you navigate.
I think I had seen it back when they went back to the original, but I did not know the backstory. So
just things that happen when you're doing creative work.
I know. I remember it required a lot of salesmanship on your part to get the new mark through, and we were really proud of the work. And so sometimes you just have to let it go at that and know that you controlled what you can control and let the rest go, for sure.
Yeah. Do you have any other kind of stories in your life about doing really fantastic work? I mean, I don't know what your policy is too. Like, do you put that in your portfolio, the work that you want, or do you just kind of, leave that alone? What do you do these days with the stuff you're working on that doesn't make it?
Yeah. I mean, there's always this interesting point in a project where, it's a delicate balance between the client has hired you to do, hopefully based on work that you've done, that they've seen, that they like. And so there's hopefully an element of trust there, but trust has its limits. And oftentimes you reach a point in a project where you realize it could go either way. And I think everybody has a different take on it. I mean, I hit a point where I'll sort of give my opinion and fight for what I think is right as far as for the client. But at some point you kind of realize they're the client and you're not. And it's always a delicate balance. So there are projects that it's disappointing because you get to a point and you realize this one's not going in the portfolio. You had high hopes early on. I only show work that I feel like, I mean, I come from old school when portfolios were physical objects that you show. And we had different philosophies then. It was like, you want to show like 8 to 10 pieces, and you're only as good as your weakest piece. And so I try to stick with that even now. And so there's things that paid the bills. I did the best I could. Maybe the client's happy with it, but the end result, I'm not that happy with it. And so I try to put my best foot forward with that stuff. I think it's a really delicate balance, because sometimes the client might love it, but I might not be as happy with the end result, or don't want more work like that, or whatever.
Yeah, it's a lesson learned.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel like you get to a point? I mean, I bet you're at the point where you can still save something, right? Like if a client goes a certain direction that you're not as happy with, you can still kind of save it or pull it out of kind of the dysfunction that they've kind of pointed it towards, if that makes sense.
Well, I think it's a little easier as an illustrator, but I think the best projects are ones where the client comes to you because of something really specific that you've done. So you're not necessarily a replaceable cog in the machine. You are like the fuel that they need for it. So I think that tends to happen more in illustration, maybe. Because maybe they're looking for a specific style, or if someone's coming to me out of one of the personal projects I've worked on and they go, we love this thing that you did, do that for us. Like that to me is the tees you up for the most success, because you come in with a lot of respect, you come in with a lot of footing. They really trust you, and it's no guarantee. I mean, I've had projects where that's happened and it hasn't gone great, but I think you're always looking for those red flags and green flags at the beginning of projects. And that's definitely a green flag when the client comes in and they've either got a bunch of work on the mood board that's your work. Right. That's kind of ideal. It gives you a lot of confidence. You go in going, okay, I know I can sort of do my approach, because that's what they like. And that to me is the most comfortable I am typically in projects.
Do you find I always thought this was really interesting, but back when I worked with Don and my portfolio, our portfolio was out there. I thought it was really interesting that, they would come to us for the work that we had in our portfolio, but then when we would start working with them, they would try to micromanage it out of like, I guess our genius, if that makes sense. Like we would only show the things that we wanted to show.
Yeah.
But then, and we would tell them, I think that would be our first argument would be like, hey, listen, all of the things that you loved were things that we basically got to run with. I mean, obviously there's client input. Obviously you have a name for your band. Obviously there are things that we have to kind of, consider here, but the things that you love, we got to run with. And all we want to do is be able to run with this. And it's interesting. Like, do you find that's kind of, that tends to be what people do with your work, or are you kind of past that?
I mean, no, there are no guarantees. I mean, you can have all the green flags in the world. And I think one thing doing this longer is you realize the questions to ask, because every new job, every new client, you learn like, oh, I should ask that. It's like, next time I'm going to ask that. I guess the most pressing example for me where everything seemed teed up right was I had done this project. It was probably the first project I did that kind of started to break me out of the agency world into the freelance world. I had done this, I had been trying to look for an opportunity to do more illustration. This had just happened back when I spoke at Creative Works 2. But I did this project called Max 100, and really it was just, I wanted to learn to illustrate in this new kind of digital medium. I hadn't illustrated much since college. The tools were very primitive then, if they existed at all. So I was more of a traditional illustrator, and came out and said, how do I familiarize myself with all that I can do now? And so I was really just looking for some sort of vehicle. And so I reached back into my stuff I loved, my history, and I just found my favorite sneaker of all time, which is the Nike Air Max 1. And it was really simple. I'm going to illustrate this one sneaker all these different ways and all these different styles. I'm just going to do it over and over again, try all these different things. Project kind of took on a life of its own, and I ended up doing 100 of them, and that's why I named it Max 100. And I hid the name of the shoe in there so Nike wouldn't sue me by using their product name.
Right.
So yeah, it was a huge success. It as far as like
that's where I got to know you first.
Yeah. That's probably how a lot of people who have known me for a while got to know me. And of course it connected me to the sneaker world, which was a huge eye opener. Like I grew up a sneakerhead, but had no idea kind of the obsessive nature of that world until I got into it. So about a year after I published the 100 as a Kickstarter book, and then had the ideal scenario, right? The dream client. So Nike, I get an email from Nike. We want you to do exactly what you did for yourself. We want you to do that for us. Got the PDF with the Nike logo on it with my name on it. It was so exciting. And at the time they had 4 of their classic Air Max products they were doing in this engineered mesh. And so it was all about reinvention. So the idea was to take these classic Nike Air Max products, illustrate the concept of reinvention. And so my interpretation of that is, well, that's what I did with Max 100 is, and for those of you not familiar, it could be anything from a very detailed illustration to make it look like it's made out of Legos, to
meat,
make it look like meat, make it look like a pancake, make it look like an air freshener, and actually like make that air freshener and photograph it. So it was kind of the sky's the limit. So from my perspective, it was about reinvention already, but there were a lot of questions I probably should have asked. And I was working with part of their digital team. They're an amazing team, but they had never commissioned a big project like this or this kind of work. So they had a little bit of a learning curve. So when I was working on Max 100, I could work as fast as I wanted. I could get 3 done a week. I could get 5 done a week. So I just thought, okay, I'm doing these 30 illustrations for them. No brainer. This will be easy. Well, we're like a month and a half into the project and I don't have one approved sketch left. It was just like round after round after round of sketches. And I start to question myself, like, what's wrong? Why can't I, sell these ideas? But really it was, you're taking this, for me, which was just this very instinctive, creative exercise that really had no rules other than the shoe was positioned in the center of the page in the same position every time. And now I'm working with this, global phenomenon, and everything that goes through their system really has to tell a very specific story.
Right.
So I go into it thinking like I can do whatever I want. They're kind of telling me I can do whatever I want, but when it's time for them to sell it up the chain, it's like, well, how does this tell our brand story? And I'm like, well, I don't know, I guess it doesn't. So we had to really develop this grid. It took us about 2 months in to develop this grid of how many of each piece we're going to tell, what stories are we going to tell, how are we going to tell the story. And it had to tell the cultural impact story, the color story, the product story. And then I kind of got a category where it could be whatever I wanted. So once we did that, once we established that structure, we started really selling through ideas because they all had a reason behind it.
Yeah.
But that was like a real lesson learned. You think all the elements are there, like dream client that everybody thinks they want to work for, does amazing work, this huge cultural impact. They want me specifically because of what I've done. And in the end, I love the work that I did for them. I'm happy with it. It was great, but there was a point where it was super frustrating just because I didn't ask the right questions. I went in with a set of assumptions.
And the dynamics were probably a little off too. Like you probably weren't used to working with a corporation that large. And so there's going to be so many people up the chain that are going to have to either check, run things by, or they want to have their influence. And so you're just dealing with different dynamics honestly. And then, I'm sure that the work that or the kind of the rubric or the grid that they put you through, I think made the work stronger in some assumption, in some ways, and in some ways, maybe it didn't. I'm not exactly sure where you land on the end of that, but
definitely lost a little bit of the spontaneity. That was part of the fun of a project like that, is you just have this running list of ideas, and then you wake up the next day and you're like, what do I feel like doing today?
Right.
And that was a huge part of what's fun about that project, or any other kind of personal project what I'll call an automated project, where kind of what the end result is. It's just, how do you make it that day? So it definitely it lost a little bit of that spontaneous feel, but I'm happy with the work. They were happy with the work. At the end of the day, that's what really matters. And it was a good lesson for me in asking more questions up front, thinking about all the possibilities of, all this set of assumptions that we often go in with, confirm or refute those assumptions, ask a lot of questions. So that was a great lesson for me.
Yeah. And I feel like what you're talking about, communication, if I'm ever upset with the client, if I just calm down for a second and I kind of think through what I did and didn't say, it usually, like, the frustration, honestly, at the end of the day, is on my shoulders through either a scope of work, a conversation, or an email that wasn't had. And we're just off the races, and you've got two different people in two different locations, running on their same assumptions. And that happens. And I think, as I don't do as much creative work as I used to, but most times when I'm feeling that frustration, it really is on my shoulders and the communication that I did or did not have,
Yeah. Over communicate. Definitely. I'm still not great at that. Like, I still can be a little bit lazy with that stuff. Like, they probably get it, and it comes back to bite me. But for sure. Like, over communicate, just make sure that you think about the questions, ask the questions. That helps a lot.
Yeah. And don't make too many assumptions. So I guess I wanted to make sure that we talked about your personal projects, because I think that's kind of like a theme that I absolutely love. I think your first one was the Air Max 100. And that's where you and I think you first came on the scene. What year was that? Because I almost feel like I was in, I could be wrong, but I feel like I could have been in Seattle working with Don when that came out, but I could be wrong.
It's possible. I want to say it's like 12 years ago.
No, that was like 20 years ago. Okay.
Yeah. No, it was because I've been out on my own for about 12 years.
Where did you work
Start-
previously?
So I worked for a local small brand agency. That I was there for cumulatively about I want to say 8 years. So I had two sort of stints there. And it was a small. They've changed their name, but back then it was just the owner's last name, and it was a good shop. That I worked with Joey Ellis there. That's where he and I met, and
That's
have
right.
become good friends. And very talented illustrator, works for Duolingo now. Um, so yeah, so I worked there. We did a lot of that was kind of like I enjoyed the people. I enjoyed sort of the approach to the work, but it was just at the end of the day, the company was starting to go after kind of a type of work that I wasn't that interested in. And so I was
Right.
in my late 30s. I needed to make a certain amount of money, but I also, creatively wanted to be satisfied. And so my answer to that was just to start to make more work on the side, just to scratch that creative itch. And inevitably that grew my freelance roster. Inevitably I had enough going that I could kind of afford to leave and make the leap.
Yeah. So, okay. So with these personal projects, one of the things I want to know, and you spoke about it in a minute, you wanted to scratch that itch of illustration, get better at that, and just try a bunch of different things out. What kind of, let's start with Air Max 100 and maybe move on from there to the different things that you've done. But what's the kind of the commonality of when these things start for you, or when these ideas start coming up for you to do another personal project? And by personal project, I mean, let's be clear. It's not like it's not just art that you're doing. I mean, you're thinking of a product that you want to get out there, and there's a Kickstarter involved and things like that. So yes, it
Yeah.
is a personal project, but it's also very well thought through and designed. It's not just something you're throwing out there and
Yeah.
into
I mean,
ether.
don't give me too much credit. I don't have that much of a plan. So Max 100 was literally like, this would be fun. I'll do this. And it went through various phases. Like it started, I illustrated the shoe, and then I was just going to change the colors. And then I was like, oh, it'd be fun. It'd be fun to this was back when Twitter felt small and
Right.
wasn't whatever it is now. And so that's how I originally got connected with Don, is I was like, well, who are my favorite people out there? I'm going to kind of ape their style and do a version in their style, tag them on Instagram wasn't a thing, tag them on Illustrator and
Right.
on Twitter, and see if they respond. And so it was literally like just tagging a bunch of people, Aaron Draplin, Jessica Hish, Invisible Creature. So I just did a bunch of versions that were just like, oh, this would be fun to just do this thing in all these styles. So then after that, after I did about 10 of those, that's when it became an exploration on my own, because I was like, oh, this is fun. I'm just going to keep doing it. So
you were just doing it for social media, because you hadn't. I mean, there's a book involved. If people
the book
don't know
was
that
not,
project.
yeah, the book was not an idea at the beginning. The book was when sneaker blogs started running it. Different sites started picking it up. And I was like, oh, there's like an audience for this. There's this whole sneaker art world out there that I had no idea even existed, which I think was to my benefit to just come into it as an outsider. I didn't have any plan. I didn't know it has to be like this or it has to be like that. And so yeah, it kind of took on a life of its own. And so I decided this was kind of early Kickstarter as well. A couple of design books had come out and kind of gone crazy and done really well. And I thought, yeah, why not? I'll put this together, put this program together, price it out. It felt like kind of a can't lose sort of proposition. So yeah, so that happened that way. I think in general, personal projects just start as, what am I excited to work on?
Right.
I wish I could say I had some master plan, but I think if you're working on something that you're passionate about, that you feel a bunch of energy about, and the end product is good, it's got to be good. There's a lot of stuff out there. Then I think something positive will tend to happen with it. I think online space is much more crowded than it used to be, but
Right.
but that's been the formula for everything that I've done, is just to play with something for a while. Oftentimes it'll be maybe a new skill I want to learn, maybe something I haven't had a chance to do in my client work that I wish that a client would hire me to do. If I got a new iPad and I want to start drawing on it, then I make up some little assignment for myself to repetitively do a thing. And so when I speak to students or I talk to people about personal projects, my litmus test is like, if it never leads to anything, like it wasn't wasted time. You know, I
Right.
still enjoyed it. I learned something.
You're not seeing dollar signs when you have these ideas.
Not in that regard. I definitely would say my most calculated aspect of it for me is I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina. We're a big city, but we're not a huge design savvy city. I wouldn't say we're like a design mecca by any stretch. And
Right.
so, but I love living here. I like being here. And so a lot of my work is not local. And so it's a way for me to kind of like have a presence online, have people see my work. So I've been pretty good about staying active with work that I care about, continuing to put that work out there, because honestly, I have no idea how to sell myself. And that's pretty much what I know to do. Well, how about this? Well, what about that? You know, I mean, that's pretty much the depth of my philosophy there, is just do more work like the kind of work I want to get hired to do. You know, I mean, I've heard other people say that as well. It's just, nobody's going to take a chance and go, oh, you've never done coffee packaging, but I really think you could do a great job. You know, they're going to typically say, who out there is doing amazing coffee packaging? So it's kind of that thing. What do I want my presence online to be like as an illustrator? What's my tone of voice when I illustrate? What kind of work do I want to do? And so I try to pick things that's about as strategic as I get with it, but mostly it's just it's that part of you when you were a kid, that whatever you like to do that got you into this creative field, it taps into that.
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
It's finding that space where you just love making it, you love creating it. If nobody ever saw it, you'd still be glad that you did it.
Yep.
If it led to nothing, it still was worth your time. So hopefully everybody has something like that. And for me, it's this. And so, yeah, that's about as calculated as I get with. I wish I could say I had a master plan, but I don't.
No, but it's good. It's good to know too that you're not, it's not a fake client in a weird way. Like, it's not a fake client relationship. You found this really unique way, I think, to do things that put the type. I mean, we'll talk about this when we get into your kind of latest book stuff too. But like, you have this idea that you want to get into an industry, and the only way that you can do that is by having that type of work in your portfolio, or showing that type of depth or breadth or whatever you want to call it. But the clients you said you have in North Carolina, they're just not going to be asking for that sort of thing. So how does a person who's seemingly stuck, in a certain place do that? And I think that, this Air Max 100 was definitely kind of the start of that. And you articulated that as well. I just want to be clear about that. It was the start of that, because I think a lot of people are like, well, I'm not going to do work for free, and I'm not going to do, it's kind of come at it from a different angle. And it's like, no. But like, if you're just concerned about making money, then again, this is not the type of project that's not the type of, onus. I'm going to say wrong words, but that's not where you were coming from with this.
No.
It was going to be something you did regardless of whether, like you said, whether it landed or not, made $1 or not, whatever.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really smart place. I mean, I think also Ty Matson would say that, a lot of what he did through Star Wars, Dexter, Lost,
Lost early.
had a similar impact in it. And you guys aren't the only ones. I think there's so many people that have been able to do this. So.
Yeah, it feels like that's still going on. There was definitely like there was a golden era of that I don't know if we're still in. Maybe we are. I don't know why. I don't know if the algorithm just chokes out kind of stuff more than it used to, but Ty, I loved what he did. That was a huge inspiration. Yeah, it just seemed like we went through this era back then, maybe 8, 10 years ago, where people were just making stuff, putting it out there. For some reason, it felt like it was easier to get eyes on it. And that just kind of became the way to, I don't know.
No, I
felt
think
like
you're right.
normal. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I definitely think there's a lot more. I mean, I wouldn't even say it's noise. There's just a lot more projects out there for people to kind of scrape through. And if they're
Yeah.
not a part of your following, they maybe never would see it.
Right.
The other thing I think is important to kind of bring up here too is just, and this is so important in general, is that you knew how, like, let's just stick with Air Max 100. You knew how to create a logo, a brand, a product, an illustration, a story. There were all of the things that you knew how to do very, very well and better than most people that just have an idea because you were a graphic designer. And so and I think that's the novel thing about these things back when they started coming out, is they were products that basically would have never been created if not for a creative professional that just decided to do it on their own. And so I think that's, I mean, I want to talk to other folks about this too, but just this idea that you're a graphic designer, like, I think the world is your oyster at that point. I mean, that just seems like an incredible base level for creating something on your own and doing it at a level that not only graphic designers would really be excited about, but everyone else, because it's the same process, the same craft, the same stuff that you would be doing for a client or for a business.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I love about, I always have this, I don't know if I have it as much anymore, but I used to have this struggle of, am I too much of a generalist? Do I need to get more specific?
Oh, that's a good conversation to have.
Well, I do this, I'm in this I operate in this illustration world where it really pays to have like a signature style, but, that can have a shelf life on it, that can be in or out. Then I operate over on this other side where I'm doing brand identity work. And I've kind of made my peace with it. I've made my peace with, I'm in my 50s. And so what keeps this fresh for me is the fact that I get to do lots of different things. I like lots of different things. I love the storytelling aspect of it. I love doing layout. I love doing identity work. I love doing illustration. Occasionally you get these projects where it all kind of like coalesces and you get to do a little bit of everything, which is kind of the dream for me. And so, yeah, I mean, I think these little ventures, whether it's the Max 100 book or the most recent book or anything else that I've done, that's why I got into this, was to create this little universe, to create this little suite of, here's what the illustrations are. How does that look in a book? What's a logo for that look like? What's a website for that look like? How do I sell it? How do I take it onto social media? So all those things are just, it's kind of the reason I like to do this is that creating that whole effort. And so whenever I do a personal project, you're right. It's like, you're in control. You get to do what you want. Fail or succeed, it's kind of on your shoulders. And I really,
lots on the line for you. So you're going to do the work that would prove your worth and value. It's a weird way. Like, I don't know who you're trying to prove, but in my life, I'm trying to prove to my dad that I'm actually, worth something. And so, I'm going to do something that would impress my dad, not that he's got the best taste or whatever. There's something about that.
Yeah, no, this was, growing up, this was what I could do. Like, this was what I was good at. So for better or for worse, there's a huge,
and I'm sure in the South, you didn't get a lot of love for being the kid who was drawing
in the corner. No, unless they wanted, hey, can you draw my name in that cool painted ninja type, like
Ninja Turtle?
No,
Garfield.
I used to draw this sort of signal noise style painted type. I used to do that kind of thing, and people would want their names in it. But yeah, I mean, there's a huge piece of my identity that's wrapped up in this whole thing, for better or for worse. I think most times for better, because it means
for sure
it's hard for me to check out of anything that is related to what I do for a living, just because I I care about it so much, and I have a hard time not doing my best, just because I don't know, this is just always what I could do. And I took a huge amount of pride in it, and it is a huge part of my identity. I think that can go either way, whether that's good or bad, but at its best, I think it helps you because you care. It really matters to you. And I have a hard time putting something out with my name on it that I'm not proud of, because it feels like a reflection of myself.
Yeah, and as you grow, you develop your tastes get better, and then you just continue to put out better work. But you're right. I mean, I think one of the things you're touching on that I think is just as a person that's so important is just to remember that, like, you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater in your personal development, right? Like, we've all had shitty things happen to us, whether it be career-wise, family-wise, upbringing-wise, whatever it is. And if you throw it all out, it's just like you're not really learning from what came before you. But if you find ways to, not only acknowledge it, but harness it to your advantage, and to, like you were saying, like, recognize the things, like the fact that I feel like I'm a perfectionist, which, again, not the best thing to be, but the fact that I spend so much time thinking about these things to where whatever comes out or whatever launches ends up being at minimum great. Then you're working with something. And again, maybe that goes back to my father. I'm sure there's more things there, but to just act like that is something that I shouldn't pay attention to or value or even thank him for in some weird way. Like, I think it's a little foolish, but,
yeah. And I have one thing that helps me is I just have a huge amount of gratitude that, like, I get to do this. I'd be screwed if I couldn't do this. If I had to make if I had to do everybody hopefully knows what I mean, but if I had a real job, this is a real job, but you know what I mean? Like, it's us as designers, it's such a part of, like, what we love to do, that I'm just grateful that I get to do something. It's not that it's not work. It's not that it's not hard sometimes, or financially there are scary times or all that stuff. But there are days when you sit down at the desk and you're just like, I'm really looking forward to this. Like, I'm really excited about what I'm about to work on, and this is fun to me. And I would do this, no matter what it took, I would do this. And so there are those moments that I think really sustain me, where I can back up and go, I'm really grateful that I have this ability to do this, and that, I don't know. Yeah, that helps me a lot when there are times that are discouraging or frustrating. It really helps me keep things in perspective, to feel like I'm pretty lucky that I get to do something creative for a living.
Quick break. If this conversation's hitting home, send it to someone that you think would enjoy it. Social media comes and goes, but the stuff that lasts is real connection. A text, an email, you need to hear this message. Thanks. You can also stay in the loop by signing up for our newsletter and checking out upcoming Creative Workers Union workshops and events, all linked in the show notes. All right, back to Matt. Back in the day, before our time, because, I mean, you're a little older than I am, but at the same time, like, we're pretty much working. I'm sure, at the beginning of my career, there was film, and you'd shoot film, and they'd make plates and all that stuff. But, we were working on computers primarily. But there was a time where the only people who got into these types of careers were a certain type of person who would basically do this regardless of whether or not it made them money or not. Right. And I feel like I'm trying to, there's a part of me, and there's some things that conversations I'm trying to have with people that helps us kind of recenter in that, because I feel like a lot of young people are just like, yeah, I just want to have a cool job. I want to do design. I want to draw for a living. Right. But then, back in the day, maybe it's Mad Men times, maybe it's even before that, but it's like the only people that really got into this profession were folks that were really good at it, really driven at it. And then it's the only thing they would be doing anyway. Right. And I think that's important to recognize about yourself, not in a careless way, but just like so what am I going to do with that? What am I going to do with that conviction?
The danger of that is that can cross over into, I think, some potential clients have that attitude for us, for sure, where it's like, oh, you love to do this, so here's $200, right, because you love it, or can you design this? Because you just love it. And so, yeah, I don't know. I guess we get to love it. We get to do it because we love it, but they don't get to ask us to do it because we love it. I guess that's the distinction.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's still work. There's still a value to it. And, that's always an interesting attitude to me. The people that will ask you to do it for free. And I'm always interested where that comes from. And I don't know if it's that it doesn't seem serious to them, or I don't know. Like, I've never gotten to the bottom of it, but I think anybody who's done this for any length of time runs across that, whether it's a family member, whether it's a client that has a lot of money, but for some reason thinks that they don't have to pay for whatever. And that's always been an interesting dynamic in our industry that feels a little unique to our industry.
It does. I was asked the other day by someone whose family owns, who I know have money. I know that person has money and access to money. Yeah. But they wanted me to build a brand for them for spec. And, I didn't read it. I just didn't think at this point in my career that I would come across that. And I just didn't read the email far enough down that said, by the way, I wanted to be candid with you that this is all free and the hope is blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, 5 minutes before the meeting, I canceled the meeting, texted the guy and was like, hey, I'm sorry, but I just can't do this for free. You need to find someone that's
my mortgage.
That's right. You got to find someone who's a bit more hungry for this. All right. So let's keep the personal projects rolling. Fast forward to, so before we move on from Max 100, what happened? What was the kind of the outcomes of that? I mean, obviously we've already talked about you came up with a book. There was a Kickstarter project. Yeah. How did that all go? And what were your lessons learned there? And let's move on to the next one.
Yeah, no, I mean, it went great. I ended up printing about 2,000 books. I sold those all within about a year. So I fulfilled all the Kickstarter rewards. The beauty of Kickstarter is you fulfill these rewards and you're kind of, because of the way production works, you're getting all these extra books that were part of that initial run because of how printing works. Right. And so you're able to sell those for kind of pure profit. So that really helped me. That was very early when I was just establishing my one-person studio. And so over the course of that next year, that was a nice piece of income for me to continue to sell those books. So sold out of all those. The project, made a lot of rounds online, which led to some interesting opportunities. Nothing earth-shattering, but it was it was great. And then there was a sneaker show in Dubai, like a big conference where they did a whole like gallery show of the work.
Did you go to that, or you just knew it happened?
I didn't. I was actually I was out on a 90-day contract with Facebook. And so I had, pulled up stakes here in North Carolina and moved out there for like 3 months, flying back every other week just so my kids would still recognize me, and and that was crazy, and I was exhausted. And then that thing came through, and it was like, I think I was going to be there for 12 hours, and the flight either way was like 24 hours each way. And I was like, no way. I can't do that. So they did invite me. They were going to pay my way, but I just couldn't. Maybe if I was a younger man, I could have swung it, but there was no way. But yeah, it was cool. And then I did a little collaboration with a local sneaker place here called Social Status. We did like a limited run of special edition. He had some connections with Nike, and we did a limited run. So there are, nothing hugely money-making came out of it, but a lot of little opportunities that were fun. Ultimately, for me, I think there were some ways I could have maybe pushed further into that sneaker world, but to be honest, I didn't love it. The whole thing felt a little out of whack to me.
Sure.
Maybe that, I don't know. I just, I don't know. I felt like a little bit of a poser. Like I was this guy who loved sneakers when I was a kid.
I feel like a poser too. I love sneakers. I have tons of sneakers and I try to keep them clean and the laces just right. But there's a point where I just kind of let it go. And most of the sneakerheads.
And I was rubbing shoulders with people who did not love it. And I felt this pressure to sort of be the same. And I always felt uncomfortable. Like I'd go to these sneaker things or participate in these sneaker things. I don't know. I felt this pressure to be sneaker crazy.
Right.
I love sneakers as much as the next guy, but I'm not at that level. So ultimately, lessons learned, I guess lesson one, I'm not a sneakerhead like I thought I was. Lesson two was just take an idea and beat it to death. Just keep going. Like I say that facetiously, but there's something about looking at one piece that I did versus looking at 5 pieces that I did versus looking at 100. Like there's something impressive about 100.
Right.
So I almost was like, it was like this design high wire act in a way. It was like I could just, if I could create this huge body of work, make sure each of them was up to a level that I was happy with. I just love standing back at the end of it and going, look at all these things I made and they're all unified. Yeah, there's just this hugely satisfying experience. So I think when I moved on to some of my other projects, it was the idea of sticking with something for a long time where you create a large and impressive body of work. There's something about that I think stuck with me. The other lesson was just don't overthink it. It was a very simple idea, and it was less about that the idea was brilliant, and it was more that the execution and the longevity and the perseverance kind of were the more important pieces of that. And it also just reiterated the way that I needed to make work and continue to put it out there. So those were kind of the lessons for me. I was like, oh, this can really lead to some stuff. This really, as a sales tactic, not to be too, maybe not the best term, but this is a way that I can sell myself. Like,
yeah, you recognize the strategy in that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
One of the things we didn't talk about that I'm curious about is, did you just get a job that basically gave you a chunk of money and some margin to do this work, or were you doing client work the entire time in between? Obviously, this took a long time.
Yeah.
And so I don't think the first is true, but tell me tell all of us how you created the margin and how you prioritize that in the midst of client work.
Yeah. I mean, most of this was created when I was at my last job, and it was literally, I can remember getting up early in the morning, going to Starbucks, sketching. I didn't even have my own computer at the time, going to work early at like 6. So doing sketches at Starbucks, getting to work at like 6:30, working on the work computer until work started at 8, and then working a full day, and then maybe coming back that night. So it was, I was a little obsessed at the time. And I think it was because I was in a very creatively unsatisfied place, where I felt largely anonymous with what I was doing and not satisfied with what I was doing. So once this started to get some attention, started to have some momentum, it became a little bit of an obsession for me. Like, I'm going to keep this going. I'm going to keep creating these things. I'm going to keep making them better and better. And so most of the work was done when I was still at that last agency. Actually, I think all of it. Yeah, I think all of the work was done there.
What did they think? What did the leadership of your agency think about the work you were doing? I assume because you weren't spending work hours on this. I bet you were.
No, I was not spending work hours on it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I kept it very separated. But I think the handwriting started to be on the wall. You're working for a company. I don't want to name the company, but you're working for company X,
right?
And then you're getting invited to speak at an AIGA thing, but it's not based on the work you're doing for that company. It's based on. So I started to create a little bit of like an online profile that had nothing to do with what I was doing during the day. And although it didn't affect my job, it was getting to a weird place, and that was kind of, that needed to happen anyway. It pushed me in a good direction. So around that time is when the Facebook opportunity came along. The Facebook opportunity came along because Ben Barry, who was at the time,
guy. Yeah.
Saw
I need to get him.
saw my sneaker work and was like, oh, we're looking for an illustrator that can do lots of different things. This guy can do lots of different things. Let's bring him out here for 90 days and see what he can do. It was kind of an extended job interview. And so I was out there right before the IPO and during the IPO and out at the Willy Wonka's chocolate factory that Facebook is,
Right.
as far as all the amenities and stuff.
Did Ben already have his studio up and running? The lab?
Yeah, the analog research.
Yeah.
Yep, he was running that at the time. And I joined a small team there that was called ComD. It was their communications design department. It was kind of like a multidisciplinary. We had some copywriters, we had some videographers, we had some. I was the illustrator. We had some motion designers. So it was really just Facebook was smaller then, and it was kind of their in-house catch-all for design.
Right.
It was a great experience. I loved it. Ultimately, not what I wanted to do. But it was a real springboard for me to be able to go out on my own for sure.
Did you feel like the main reason why you didn't feel like it was a good fit was just because you basically moved out there, like you said, you moved out there for a while? I remember talking. This is kind of funny, but I remember talking to Joey Ellis because he and I had become actually really good friends back in the day. We worked on some stuff together too.
Yeah.
But he had told me that you'd basically moved away, and I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on with Matt? Like, is his family mad at him? Like, I didn't know what was going on. I was trying to get the dirt at the time, and it
was crazy.
Just doing a job.
No, when my kids were small, and I would fly out on a Friday, or I'd fly out. I was there for 2 weeks, and then I'd come home that weekend. And so I could remember like catching the red eye from San Francisco on a Friday, trying to sleep on the plane, rolling up to my small daughter's soccer game on a Saturday morning, just dead on my feet.
Right.
And then flying back like late Sunday. And then my family came out for a 2-week stretch during that. So it was really like, I'm going to try this. It's going to be hard. I left my job. This is going to be for 3 months. So it's either going to be a 3-month thing where I make some great contacts and it's just a good springboard for me to do my own thing. Maybe they'll continue to hire me freelance, or I'll love it and we'll move out there. So it just wasn't, it helped me kind of like figure out sort of what mattered to me and what's kind of, this is the best example I can give. So at the time, what enabled me to leave my job, I was we were a single income family. I was in my late 30s, 3 kids. So I needed to make kind of X number of dollars. I was making it at this job, but wasn't satisfied. But over the course of like the year prior, I had been doing tons of freelance, and I was able to just put all that money away. And so then when I took this Facebook thing, yeah, I don't know. It was sort of like, this is it. Like, if I'm ever going to leave, this is the one chance I have to do it.
Sure.
And so I was working at Facebook during the day. And then I had gotten this restaurant project local here to Charlotte called JJ's Red Hot. So I'm working on, could not be 2 more different kind of things at the same time. So I'm plugged into this huge.
It's weird that there's all these hot dogs in your Facebook work.
Exactly. I'm plugged into this huge tech company, like Zuckerberg's over there in the cafe while I'm, it was surreal. I'm working with, some of the most talented people in our industry. Facebook at the time was staffing up, and they were just hiring all these amazing.
Was Higgins there? Josh Higgins?
Josh Higgins. He was not there yet.
Okay.
No, he came right after I left. Yep. Mm-hmm. So, but Nicholas Felton had come on. I did a small thing with him. So I'm sitting down with Nicholas Felton, who I think is one of the most amazing designers, and I'm working on this, 32 by 32 icon, and somebody in the meeting is like, you know how many millions or billions of people are going to see this? And I was just like, I couldn't find it in myself to care about that at all. I was excited to go work on the little hot dog project that I had over here because I'm working with somebody who is excited. They have a vision. They've allocated a good budget to something that was probably a stretch for them to allocate this much money to it, because they cared about design, because they wanted to see their dream succeed, and because they saw me as an integral part of that, and I just really liked them, and they are passionate, and I get to draw a little hot dog, and I don't know, it was just like, that was so much more satisfying to me than the kind of stuff I was doing at Facebook, which was, I think, there were probably things going on at Facebook that were more exciting than what I was working on, but it just wasn't my thing. It was like a big company. So I got to learn, like, oh, I don't think I want to ever work for a company this big.
Right.
And they had all these amazing amenities and stuff, but it was like, oh, if you don't love what you're doing every day, like, all this stuff's not enough. Like, it's not, there were amazing people leaving there all the time.
Right.
And it was because they weren't, for whatever reason. I don't know. It was a great lesson for me in kind of learning what mattered to me in my career, what really makes me happy, what kind of people I like to work with. And I realized that I like to work with small to mid-sized companies where I'm very connected to the leadership, where the leadership is very bought into design, and they see me as an integral part of their success. So they value my opinion, they value what I do. So therefore, they're going to treat me better. They're going to allocate more budget to it. I, in turn, care about their success. I, in turn, give it my best. I, in turn, want to help them succeed. And so, I don't know. Yeah, there's this sweet spot that I really like to hit. And I think that whole experience really solidified in my mind, kind of like, okay, this is the kind of stuff I like to work.
Yeah, let's touch on that towards the end, the relationship part. I think that's so vitally, I feel like that continues to come up. I think the older we get too,
Right.
We want to work with people who value us. We want to work with friends. We want to work with people who we vibe with, for a lack of a better term, that we can say things to, and they're like, yeah, I get that, whatever.
Yeah.
So let's fast forward. Let's fast forward to your next personal project, which I assume is the beginning of how do you say it? I should know this because
Good movies as old books.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I want to say it.
The genius title
dyslexic.
that's so clever.
I'm not dyslexic, but for some reason, I always want to say it backwards, which I know is not.
That's funny. Yeah, no, it's, I was kind of come up with a name for it. I'm like, well, I guess I'll just call it what it is, which has worked out fine. Yeah. So that, again, working with people you like. So it's been a while ago now. I'd say it's probably been, let's see, maybe 10 years ago. So there's Carolina Panthers is our NFL franchise here, and the center, very successful center on the team, Ryan Khalil. He was playing here in Charlotte at the time. I didn't know a lot about him back then, but I get this email from Ryan Khalil, and he had been injured that year, and so he hurt his ankle, was out the whole year, and those guys in the NFL, when they get hurt like that, they basically go in, do their rehab, and they're not with the team a lot. So I got this email, hey, I was looking on Behance, I saw you did a project that was somewhat comic related, and again, that was a personal project. I had some Batman reference in it, and he had seen that.
Yeah.
And so that's how we met and got to know him a little bit, worked on a few smaller projects with him. Come to find out, he was like, grew up a movie nerd, made stop motion little movies when he was a kid, got big, got great at football, went to USC, won a national championship, but was also in USC film school. And his dream, once he retired, was always to go back and get into the movie industry. So we've had a really long, he's one of my best friends. We've had a really long collaboration, partnership. We just work on a lot of stuff together. I work on a lot of movie pitches with him, done a lot of branding, just all kinds of things. And, you have those people that you just mesh with well creatively, and you get kind of a good shorthand with the way you communicate with each other. And he's one of those guys for me. And so he came to me with, I did a lot of pitches for his movie production company called Mortal Media. And so we were working on this pitch for it was a property that needed to look like an old vintage book cover. And that was how we were going to style it and do it. And so, yeah, so I did that. And I was like, wow, it was really fun. Like, again, I wish I had these master plans, but the things just kind of hit me. And it was like, oh, I really enjoyed that. I'd like to do more of that. So I thought, well, what if I took some of my favorite movies and I did them in that kind of that same style? And early on, it was more this very antique cloth bound sort of look, right. Which I found out was not my most comfortable style. I was very slow. But as I continued to work on it, I started to progress to more the mid-century, old paperback kind of look. And so, yeah, same thing as I did with Max 100. I started on this and just really had a good time working on it.
Did you launch it as a Kickstarter, or were you already just putting things out on your feed?
No, it was just on my feed. It was just Instagram. Now we had Instagram, Twitter. Yeah, just putting stuff out there.
Did you have a name? Was there a hashtag, or were you just
I think I had started. Yeah, I think I had started calling it Good Movies as Old Books by then. I'm pretty sure. I'd have to look back, but you know, I didn't have a logo for it or didn't conceive of it as being anything other than just kind of a fun little thing. You know, again, I wasn't going after book cover work. I was just, this is fun. I'm enjoying it. This is growing kind of a skill set. I'm getting to play in this world of film that I love so much. I'm getting to express my love, you know, for some of my favorite movies. So yeah, that's really kind of as deep as I thought about it at the time.
Well, and also, I mean, maybe you said this or maybe this comes later, but you know, this pitch work that you were doing with your buddy, I mean, you wanted to be in the space. And I think a part of this is kind of like stretching your legs, doing work again that you weren't getting paid for, to show other folks in the industry, like, hey, this guy can create some incredible visuals around your story.
Yeah. And I absolutely. And I think it was also like a style thing. Like I think, oftentimes when we play with styles that are influenced heavily by reference, we sort of develop our own style because we're kind of, emulating stuff that we like, but then our own personal preference gets mixed in there and things start to mix up. And I think that's how a lot of our style develops, is just emulation to this other process. So it's been a great exercise. It's really helped me kind of develop what my style is. Like, if I still work in a lot of different styles, but if you gave me a project, I'll probably gravitate more towards this particular style. Felt like there was an opportunity to do a book. Started selling them as prints. Got myself set up to print in-house so that I could do that. So that became a nice revenue stream for me, was the books, the prints.
Yeah. And I think all of us that were watching you do this, first of all, we started rooting for our favorite film, and then trying to figure out exactly how you were going to end up doing it. Or, you know, in my mind, I'm like, ooh, what style is this going to be done? So it was Goonies and Shawshank Redemption for me. And so I was just waiting for that to come out. And then I realized you were doing prints, and I was like, okay. And I have prints somewhere. I mean, I don't know if you're like me, but I have like boxes and boxes and boxes of tubes and prints, and it's kind of ridiculous at this point. But yeah.
Yeah. So that kept going. I did a second book. And I guess it was during the process of the second book as a Kickstarter. You know, I think the fact that I was doing a Kickstarter caused me to reach out again and put the work out there more. And so it got picked up by some different outlets. There was The Guardian UK as their big paper. They picked it up, and that was a pretty big deal. So that got a whole new set of eyes on it. And my current publishing agent, which she had a print on her wall at her office and didn't even know it was a book. Someone had bought her a print, I guess, of her favorite film. Someone came in her office and was like, oh, are you following that Kickstarter on that book. And she's like, that's a book? So she found out that it was a book and was like, so she reached out and said, have you ever, shopped this to publishers? And I was like, no, I haven't. So that's what inevitably happened, was we shopped it. The pitch process was not complicated because I had so much of the work already done and out there.
Right.
It wasn't like we had to sell it as an idea, like people got it. So we ended up going with Chronicle. Just their distribution is great. They are in a lot of the kinds of places that we wanted to be. And so we did a new version of the book, a set of 100 postcards. And then the version of the book that we did, there were several pieces from the first two books that legally I couldn't use. And so I had to go in and do about 60 more pieces. So in total, I've probably done 260 different covers. But the new book has about 200 in it. Some new ones, about 50 to 60 new ones. Yeah. And then we played with some things so that the book felt different. We did some full spreads where the cover kind of expands, so you get to see more of a horizontal version of what if the illustration finished and those kind of things. Yeah, it was a really fun process. It's been great to work with. Absolutely.
So you picked up a publisher along the way. One of the things that I was curious about when we were talking about Max 100 so I'm making some assumptions here, but I assume that in this process of doing these things, you were asking questions of other folks, right? So it just wasn't, in some ways, it just wasn't you. I mean, you were doing the work, but if you're thinking about things like, how do I self-publish, or how do I do a Kickstarter? What's the way that you put this together? I mean, in some ways, would you agree that you had a village of people, either at least initially, to help you figure this all out? Because I think at times, I think creatives, as much as we want to own something and feel like we have the value, I mean, if you're not asking, I mean, I know this because I know you've got a lot of really amazing friends that can help you with these things, and myself included. And it's just grateful again to be able to tap into that. But how much of this are you doing on your own, or asking more people for help with,
Yeah. I mean, I think for the first one, the learning curve was, really steep, way back at Max 100, because it was, who do I print with? What does fulfillment look like? Do I fulfill it myself? Do I hire somebody? What are the positives and negatives of that? How do I handle the production? So it was just finding people, often people that I didn't even know, finding people who had done something similar that was successful, reaching out, asking questions. Tyler Deeb, who has a miscellaneous goods company, I asked him a lot of fulfillment questions throughout all of these projects. He helped me, like, what software do you use? What's the best methods? Because that's what he does a lot. So I think most people will find that if you ask people in the creative industry, I think people are generally willing to help. And, the whole pay it forward idea. I mean, if anybody ever asks me, if they see that I've done a Kickstarter and they want to ask me, I'm happy to turn and share whatever I know and be honest about what I don't know, because I don't want to give bad information. But I love the idea of us helping each other, and it cuts off so many of the pitfalls of something like this, where you could sort of muscle your way through it and make your own mistakes, but there's just so many people out there that are willing to help and ask nothing in return. And so I try to be that for other people as well, on these kind of projects. One of the most satisfying things with this project is I just did a collaboration with Winthrop University's design department. And so I had approached one of their instructors out there who I thought had a lot of gallery connections, and I was interested in maybe doing a show for the pieces and maybe moving some books that way. And the whole idea of selling books ended up not really panning out. There was two classes that took on Good Movies as Old Books as like a project. And so I went out.
That's a great prompt.
Yeah,
for sure.
I went out with them and I did a workshop on my process of creating covers and took them through several iterations of, here's the process on all these different versions. And it was their task it was a production class. So it was their task to, how do we convert this book into a gallery show? And so that was their project. Is there was a gallery on campus, and they got to creatively come up with ways to take the concept of the book and display the work in all these different ways. And that was actually one of the highlights of this whole project, was just getting to meet with them, getting to see what they did with it, sort of giving it over to somebody else and have them, see it have a different second life, and see the ideas that they came up with that I wouldn't have come up with on my own. That was really, really fun.
At the moment, where are you at with this project?
We just did that gallery show. That's done. The book's only been out for a little less than a month. As far as next steps, I'm not totally sure. I'm still doing some new covers with Chronicle as a way to promote the book. So I did some around the Oscars, and I'm doing some new pieces for Comic-Con. So Chronicle's going to have presence at Comic-Con, and I'm doing some of the new films that are coming out kind of in this style as part of their booth.
Nice.
Yeah. So once this kind of winds down the cycle of promotion for this, I'll see sort of what I feel like doing next, but no set plans on the horizon.
And all the while, you've, again, kind of going back to the relationship stuff we touched on, all the while you've got relationships with clients. I mean, are you doing client work in the midst of this? Did you need to create margin? I mean, what's interesting to me too, I was thinking about this. I was talking with my buddy Brandon Reich, which I think you know.
Well, yeah.
He has relationships, and relationships have become a big deal to him for a lot of different reasons that we're going to cover on a future podcast. But the nature of his work, or album cycles, if you will, there's a long relationship there. It's like an album cycle that also does touring, that does apparel, all of these things. And then you've been working with, obviously working on this book with Chronicle, but you also have clients, and the nature of some of those relationships, is going to be a lot of work up front for some of them, and then not a lot of work. What's the rhythm of your studio and your work that you're doing now, and in the midst of, these book releases and these relationships that you're building? I again would love to, I think you articulated it really well earlier, just the value that you're looking for in those relationships. But I'd like to talk about that for a sec.
Yeah, I mean, the book stuff for me is always just like fit it in where I can. I have a pretty full slate of client work that I count on to kind of pay the bills and do what I need to do. So that's really kind of my number one.
Are you hiring anyone for this stuff, or is it just you?
No, it's just me. I've never, I go through that every now and then when I get super busy. Is it worth bringing somebody on? But so much of it is illustration work where somebody's coming to you for a particular style. Right. It's hard to hand that stuff off. No, so it's just me. I have a one-person studio, so I'm either in my office or haunting one of the local coffee shops around Charlotte often. But I enjoy the flexibility of it. But yeah, I'm all project-based. I have one retainer client that's in the spirits industry that I do a lot with. And so I operate my studio kind of like most everyone else would. And then if there's slow periods, I will work on this kind of stuff. Or if I'm sitting in front of the TV at night, and I'll have the laptop open, or I'll have the iPad open, and it's just noodling with ideas. And so it's all kind of, I mostly fit this kind of stuff in between the cracks of client work for sure. But yeah, I mean, it's led to some fun things. I've gotten to do a little bit more cover work. And that's been fun. And, so it continues.
You still aspiring to get someone to ask you to do a movie poster at some point? I mean, I feel like I literally have like 2 Drew Struzans over here, and like kind of, is that kind of something you're hoping for and angling for? I hope so.
No, I mean, it would be great. I don't, not really. I think my style probably tends a little bit more towards like a alter one sheet sort of poster. But yeah, I mean, I think oftentimes there are sort of adventurous offbeat kind of things that get produced. But I guess I've had enough contact with these movie houses to know, or these movie poster houses to know that it's a pretty tough nut to crack. But if the right thing came along, I'd certainly love to do it. I think I stay pretty open-minded, and I do the kind of stuff I love to do. And, good stuff tends to come along if you put good work out there. But I wouldn't say that there's any particular thing that I'm kind of going after. But there've been some nice surprises for sure, things that have come along.
Where are you feeling now with like the being kind of the jack of all trades? I mean, I think a lot of folks, I think a lot of folks, and Alex Medina actually spoke about this at West, but this idea, I think a lot of people, like you said, are coming out trying to figure out what's their style. But, and one of the folks that I know really well, Ryan Clark, he's kind of that way too. He can do anything. You ask him to do anything and he can nail it. So where are you at this point in time with, personal style, or what's your kind of perspective about that you could share with others?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think how I'm set up has worked for me in that when the design slows down, sometimes the illustration picks up. So it's almost been like I operate as a little bit like two different companies under the same roof, which has worked well for me, because sometimes there's not enough of one type of work to sustain me and other things come along. And so as I look back on the last 11, 12 years doing this on my own, I think if I would have just picked one thing, I think it would have been hard for me to make it. And then there's the cost to my own motivation. I think it's just, I'm built to do some different things. I don't do everything. If someone comes along and wants some sort of product design or wants a real web heavy kind of project, I don't typically do that sort of thing. And I'm busy enough with other things that I don't need to. Right. So I don't do everything, but of the things I really love to do, I think it's worked well for me to keep those going creatively. It keeps me motivated. It keeps things fresh for me. And yeah, I don't know that I'm chasing that as much as I used to. I think I'm more satisfied in where I am. And that just may be time. That's just every year that I make enough to keep going, I guess I have a little more faith that it'll keep going. And so I start to question it less, and I go, well, maybe this is working. And I think it's somewhat in our nature as designers, especially as independent designers, to kind of question if we're doing it right, or could I be doing something better? Maybe that's just human nature. But yeah, I think the more I see behind me, it's like, oh, I've made it, and I've made it this way. I think I can keep making it this way, and I enjoy it. So I try not to overthink it.
All right, man. Well, this is great. I appreciate your time, and we'll do it again soon. Take care, man. Thanks for listening to State of the Union. If something we said stuck, please share it. That's how these conversations move beyond the feed. If you want to go deeper, get early access to episodes, discounts on workshops, and find more meaningful ways to connect with other creatives in real life, you can find links to all things Creative Workers Union in the show notes. Got a story about a win, a setback, or a shift that you're navigating in your own career? Send it to stories@creativeworks.co. I'd love to hear it and maybe share it on a future episode. State of the Union is produced by Creative Workers Union and edited by Sydney Gladue. Until then, keep showing up, focus on your craft, and remember, you're not alone.